Get the unmissable news stories of the day.
This is the Beijing Hour.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Shane Bigham with you on this Thursday, February 26, 2026. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, coming to you live from the Chinese capital. On today's program, the Chinese president outlined the country's priorities for its ties with Germany during the official visit by the German chancellor. The U.S. and Iran are conducting a third round of indirect talks in Geneva, aiming to reach deals on Iran's nuclear program and U.S. sanctions. The Chinese Consulate-General in Osaka has warned Chinese travelers about visiting Japan. In business, 12 years of coordinated development in the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei region. In sports, the latest teams to advance in the UEFA Champions League. In culture and entertainment, China's box office has taken the lead globally. Now checking the day's top stories. Chinese President Xi Jinping has outlined priorities for China-Germany ties. The president met German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, with the two leaders agreeing to promote dialogue and cooperation and uphold multilateralism and free trade. Xie Cheng has more on President Xi's vision for bilateral ties.
President Xi outlined three priorities for the bilateral relationship. First, he said China and Germany should be reliable partners built on mutual respect and support. China remains committed to peaceful development and advancing modernization and is ready to share opportunities with Germany and the world. He expressed hope Germany will take an objective and pragmatic approach to China to ensure long-term growth in bilateral ties. Second, Xi said the two countries should be innovation partners focused on openness and mutual benefit. Germany's new strategies in technology and digitalization align with China's push for smart and green development. Xi called for closer alignment of development plans, expanded two-way flows of talent, knowledge and technology, deeper cooperation in fields such as AI, and joint efforts to maintain resilient industrial and supply chains. Third, President Xi urged stronger people-to-people exchanges. He said as countries with rich cultural traditions, China and Germany should enhance mutual understanding and reinforce public support for friendship. The Chinese president also emphasized the importance of multilateralism, as he urged both sides to uphold the central role of the United Nations, free trade, the international rule of law, and international cooperation. China supports Europe's strategic autonomy and hopes China-EU relations will continue to advance on the basis of openness and win-win cooperation. Chancellor Merz said Germany values its close relationship with China and aims to deepen the two sides' comprehensive strategic partnership. Merz noted German businesses place high importance on the Chinese market and seek expanded cooperation for mutual benefit. He stressed that amid global uncertainty, Germany and China share a responsibility to address common challenges, support free trade, and oppose protectionism.
That was Xie Cheng reporting. China and Germany have issued a joint statement following the meeting between the two leaders in Beijing. The statement reaffirms respect, dialogue, and cooperation in addressing common challenges as the fundamental principles guiding bilateral ties. Germany reaffirmed its commitment to the One China policy. Both sides emphasized the importance of economic and trade cooperation and agreed to address each other's concerns to ensure a long-term, balanced, and sustainable economic relationship. They also agreed to continue dialogue on climate change and the green transition, reaffirming the UN Charter and international law as the basis of international cooperation. The two countries have pledged their commitment to multilateralism and free trade. They also agreed to strengthen people-to-people and cultural exchanges. Chancellor Merz says the first day of the trip has left him full of confidence, noting that the two countries have found a clear and promising path forward for the future development of relations.
Germany and China are closely interconnected, with both opportunities and risks ahead. The two sides should work to mitigate risks while safeguarding their own interests, further strengthen their partnership, expand cooperation across multiple sectors, and achieve mutually beneficial win-win outcomes.
The German Chancellor wraps up his two-day China tour on Thursday with the final stop in the eastern city of Hangzhou. He's visited China's leading robotics firm Unitree and Germany's Siemens Energy site. Accompanied by around 30 senior executives from major German firms, including Bayer, Adidas, and BMW, this marks Merz's first visit to China since taking office last year. With more, Zhao Ying spoke to Professor Cui Hongjian with the Academy of Regional and Global Governance at Beijing Foreign Studies University.
President Xi said that the new development strategies put forward by the German government in such areas as technology innovation and digital development highly resonate with China's objective of pursuing intelligent, green, and integrated development during the 15th five-year plan period. So could you give us some specific examples concerning such resonance?
This year is the first year for Chinese 15 five-year plan. And also now German side is also trying to learn something from Chinese experience to have a long time strategy for development. So I think it provides a very, very important basis for both the countries to have this synergy of development strategy, and then to strengthen the coordination for the economic policies. At the same time, as we know, even once both two countries share the similar development targets, so it will require both the countries need to have some more cooperation, not only for the policy level and also for more and more concrete, business level. Also, we know not only just share the commitments for green transition and also digital economy. And of course, I think the very, very important issue for both sides is how could they transfer the common grounds of policy into more and more cooperative projects. If we take the case of electric vehicle industry, you can find that now it's time for both China and Germany to promote the very, very positive effect of the cooperation between China and Germany on the e-way or some other green economy. Another, I think, important issue is now German side take the importance of Chinese achievement on AI or some other digital economy. So I think it could be a very big issue for both two countries, for both two economies to find out complementary cooperation between Chinese AI or some other digital technology and traditional German manufacturing, especially the car making or some other sectors.
Yeah, and President Xi also called on the two countries to support the two-way flow of talent, knowledge, and technology and jointly keep industrial and supply chains stable and unimpeded. What do you think is the most urgent step the two sides need to take right now?
As we know, recent years, in the name of to get China right, some German public opinion is trying to have this pushback strategy to deal with so-called the Chinese influence in Germany and also in Europe at large. To some degree, this kind of views become, I think, a negative impact on policy on German side. So at this moment, I think it is important when China and Germany they try to reconstruct the policy and the context of cooperation to promote the mutual confidence and also mutual trust between two peoples, between two societies, become very, very important. As we know, once there are some more exchange and frequent dialogue and even cooperation, it will provide more and more favorable environment for any other cooperation. So undoubtedly, I think that once China and Germany, we can find out a common ground to promote to people contact and also technological and industry cooperation. I think there will be some more ideas, there are some more solutions to deal with it. But of course, I think that the first step for all of this cooperation and exchange between China and Germany is we need to promote the mutual perception between two sides. Because once there are some more hesitance, once there are some more suspicions with each other, it will produce more and more barriers for mutual exchange and even mutual cooperation.
That was Cui Hongjian with the Academy of Regional and Global Governance at Beijing Foreign Studies University. Well, trade ties between China and Germany have expanded since the establishment of diplomatic relations more than 5 decades ago. Data shows trade of goods between the two countries surpassed $210 billion last year, up 5.2%. Germany remained China's largest trading partner in Europe in 2025, while China regained its position as Germany's top trading partner following a one-year lapse. Machinery and electrical products accounted for more than 70% of bilateral trade. Michael Schumann is the chairman of the board of directors of the German Federal Association for Economic Development and Foreign Trade. And he says German investment in China has grown significantly, calling on Germany to welcome Chinese investment in return.
We have seen, in the wake of shifts in US policy, how economic relations and dependencies can be used as tools to push through extreme political demands. On the other hand, people are increasingly aware that we should not be overly constrained by geopolitical risks. Therefore, companies in various countries are producing more for domestic markets as well as for export. A significant part of the investment growth we see in German industry, including among German mid-sized companies, comes from firms that have not left China. In fact, over the past year, German companies have invested more there than they did 4 or 5 years ago. They find China's regulatory environment to be stable and manageable. Therefore, we should welcome Chinese investment in Europe and Germany. The establishment of production plants and the creation of jobs naturally bring a transfer of know-how. Rather than confronting this with protectionist barriers, we should engage more thoughtfully and strategically.
Wolfram Elsner is a professor emeritus of economics at the University of Bremen. And he says Western car giants are seeking partnerships with Chinese electric vehicle makers.
The example is set by the corporate economy. Once again, they are after, it's not only the German corporate, it's the EU corporations, and it's even the US corporations. They are striving after cooperative joint ventures, corporations with Chinese companies. Look, Ford and General Motors and Stellantis, all the big American or international car producers, they are all striving to set up new cooperative relations with Geely and BYD and all the other Chinese EV companies in that industry. And it applies to other industries as well. It's the chemical industries, it's tool machines, etc., etc.
Well, he adds that such corporate trends should serve as a wake-up call for some politicians in Berlin and Brussels to embrace a more forward-looking cooperation with China. And he calls on those politicians to drop their defensive stance and stop imposing restrictions on Chinese investment. China and Germany are seeking ways to strengthen cooperation in the automotive industry. Chinese Premier Li Qiang has assured Chancellor Friedrich Merz that Beijing will actively address the needs of German companies operating in China. Natalie Carney spoke with insiders to learn more.
It's called In China, for China, Volkswagen's strategy to design and build vehicles in China for the Chinese market by partnering with local firms like Xpeng to develop advanced vehicle electronics and smart systems. Meanwhile, Germany's Audi is also expanding its R&D partnership with Chinese state SAIC carmaker, developing a China-specific sub-brand simply called Audi, as well as related tech platforms.
China automotive industry has been on a higher scale and a bit earlier in battery electric development. So to take this technology advantage and bring it into the European manufacturers. And here's, of course, then helping as well the Chinese brands to come into the European markets, because if the people know that there is a cooperation going on, that they have less caveat towards the Chinese brands.
Beyond technology, the partnership is also strategic. Cooperation is expanding on both sides. While German automakers are growing R&D operations in China, Chinese brands like Li Auto and Xiaomi are opening new research centers in Germany. Euro EV are working with Chinese brands such as iWays in Europe to develop more efficient and diverse EVs for the European market.
We want to help the brands in China to understand what are the specific needs of Europe, develop those into a proper product, and then have the Chinese brands engineer those on the basis of what they already have, and then brought back to Europe again.
Battery development, intelligent driving, and digital vehicle platforms are all key areas of cooperation, while European and Chinese partners are also building battery gigafactories in both regions to secure supply chains and reduce production costs.
These collaborations are accelerating electric mobility by helping to set benchmarks in performance, sustainability, and market integration.
While trade tensions, intellectual property concerns, and increasing geopolitical competition have added some complexities to cooperation, both sides continue to invest heavily in joint innovation. As governments race to net zero targets, many believe cooperation is no longer an option, but a necessity as technology advances.
That was Natalie Carney in Munich. Coming up, U.S. and Iranian officials hold another round of indirect talks in Geneva.
Pulse Plus, a selection of the best podcasts in China, covering history, customs, music, literature, and in-depth dialogues. Find your way to a wealth of Chinese culture and thinking, all on Pulse Plus.
16 past now. Representatives from Iran and the United States have met in Geneva for a third round of indirect talks mediated by Oman. The discussions took place amid a U.S. military buildup in the Middle East, the largest since the invasion of Iraq back in 2003. U.S. President Donald Trump said he'll attack Iran if an agreement's not reached, but prefers a diplomatic solution. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian cited Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei as saying that Tehran will not develop nuclear weapons. Well, meantime, China says it's closely following the situation in Iran. Beijing's expressed opposition to the use or threat of force in international relations. Concerns are mounting that the tense standoff between Washington and Tehran could have far-reaching effects across the region. Analysts in Yemen say the Houthis may be preparing to intervene if the U.S. launches an attack on Iran. Marwan Nabil reports on how Yemen's emerged as a pivotal factor amid rising regional tensions.
Tensions in the Red Sea are escalating following recent directives. Houthi forces have raised their combat readiness to the highest level. The moves are unfolded along key coastal routes, heightening fears of wider escalation ahead of February 26 talks between United States and Iran.
I believe war is on the verge of breaking out between the United States and Iran. As a result, the Houthis are preparing themselves to enter the confrontation alongside Iran in what they frame as a defensive war against the United States. This position is not surprising. This abnormal entity, which exerts control over Yemen, carries out Iranian agendas and is aligned with Iran politically and ideologically. It has nothing to do with the position or will of the Yemeni people in any way.
These moves go beyond Yemen by tightening their presence around the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The Houthis are increasing pressure on one of the world's most critical trade routes, raising fears of escalation as diplomatic deadlines approach.
The recent Houthi attacks are aimed at gaining a strong pressure card at the international negotiating table, especially since such moves target international shipping along some of the world's most critical maritime corridors. These actions also carry economic repercussions, including higher maritime shipping costs.
This standoff is no longer confined to Yemen. As U.S. naval forces increase their presence, the Red Sea is emerging as a high-risk zone where any miscalculation could trigger wider confrontation.
As talks draw closer, tensions here remain elevated. Whether this mobilization is meant as leverage or signal a possible confrontation, Yemen has become a key variable in the region's fragile security equation.
That was Marwan Nabil reporting. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he and U.S. President Donald Trump have agreed in a telephone call that trilateral talks with Russia in March should lead to a meeting of the country's leaders. Zelensky says this is the only way to resolve the complex and sensitive issues and finally end the conflict. The telephone call took place before Ukrainian and U.S. negotiators were scheduled to meet on Thursday to discuss post-war reconstruction. Zelensky thanked the U.S. for its active involvement in the peace process. He said the difficulties are not at the military level, but in the political will to end the conflict. He rejected Russian claims that Kyiv is trying to obtain nuclear weapons, calling it an attempt to exert political pressure on Ukraine. Cuban forces have killed 4 people and wounded 6 others on board a speedboat from Florida that entered Cuban waters. Cuban officials say the people on board were armed with assault rifles and had terrorist intentions. They say their Border Patrol unit was fired upon when it approached the vessel and its commander was wounded. Havana says the 10 people on the speedboat were Cuban nationals living in the United States. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Washington will independently seek to verify what happened. Wednesday's deadly clash comes amid high tensions between the two nations. The U.S. has blocked virtually all oil shipments to the island, increasing pressure on the Cuban government. More than 1,000 companies are suing the Trump administration to request refunds on tariffs they've paid. The lawsuits come after the Supreme Court ruled that the tariffs the president imposed under an emergency powers law were unconstitutional. Owen Fairclough has more from Washington.
The U.S. Supreme Court dealt Donald Trump an historic defeat over his tariffs, and now the business community wants a refund. FedEx is the latest to join some 1,000 companies demanding the Trump administration reimburse them. Some had already launched legal action after Trump hit trade partners with varying duties nearly a year ago that have raised more than $133 billion. The Supreme Court last week ruled the president acted illegally because he exceeded his authority, because he needs congressional approval to impose duties beyond 150 days.
I used these tariffs, took in hundreds of billions of dollars to make great deals for our country.
But if Trump's Republicans back his State of the Union speech to Congress on Tuesday night, a minority of them oppose tariffs. And as those lawmakers eye November's congressional elections, some studies suggest duties are backfiring on businesses and consumers already suffering persistent inflation. Trump is undeterred, immediately announcing new blanket duties of 15% after that Supreme Court ruling. And he insists he can work around Congress.
Congressional action will not be necessary. It's already time-tested and approved. And as time goes by, I believe the tariffs paid for by foreign countries will, like in the past, substantially replace the modern-day system of income tax.
As the legal battles begin in the US, Trump's tariffs continue to reverberate around the world. UK luxury car maker Aston Martin announcing on Wednesday it's cutting 1/5 of its workforce, partly over the impact of US duties and slumping demand.
That was Owen Fairclough reporting on the fallout after the Supreme Court overturned the current U.S. administration's import duties. The fallout from the January release of files related to the late sex offender and financier Jeffrey Epstein has rippled across Europe. Millions of documents detail his alleged links to prominent European politicians, royalty, and business leaders. French prosecutors have since opened 2 new investigations. And Sarah Coates reports.
In Paris, the City of Light, investigators are reopening disturbing questions raised by Jeffrey Epstein's links to France, focusing on alleged offences that could include both sexual abuse and financial wrongdoing. Police are urging victims to come forward after a trove of Epstein files reignited scrutiny and prompted Paris prosecutors to reopen lines of inquiry.
We have new elements with 3.5 million documents published, so maybe looking at them we will find some elements from a more recent period and then a case could be opened. But the first one we had in France, it was not possible because of prescription.
The prosecution of alleged sexual offences are now time-barred under France's statute of limitations, known here as prescription. That's why investigators and experts say the financial trail may be where there's still room to act.
For the French people, I would say that they're really reluctant to give any more confidence to these kind of people. And it's very important now for the French politicians to get back the trust of the public.
The Paris prosecutor is sifting through the Epstein files, cross-checking them against victim complaints, media reports and evidence already reviewed by French courts. One location keeps coming up.
He saw that dealing with those rich people and billionaires and Silicon Valley top guys, etc., protected him. Because you remember when the Wall Street crash in 2008, the banks, too big to fail. Epstein wanted to be too big to be arrested. It's the same logic.
And in France, that mix of influence and finance is exactly what's fueling public anger. It's also why prosecutors say the money trail may be where evidence can still be tested. For prosecutors, the question is what can still be proved on French soil and whether any of it falls within today's legal time limits. But for many in France, the renewed scrutiny is already forcing uncomfortable questions about access, accountability, and who gets protection.
That was Sarah Coates reporting. Coming up, Chinese officials issue a warning for citizens about travel in Japan.
You've been listening to programs from CGTN Radio.
CGTN Radio.
We invite you to visit us online for more audio, pictures, and in-depth reports. At radio.cgtn.com, you can access a wide range of programs and find your favorite news, talk, features, entertainment shows, and podcasts. Hear the difference with CGTN Radio.
26 past the hour. The Chinese Consulate-General in Osaka has urged citizens to avoid traveling to Japan amid deterioration in public security. It comes after an unidentified assailant attacked a Chinese national in Osaka and stole a backpack containing 5 million yen, or roughly $32,000. The suspect remains at large. The consulate called on the Japanese authorities to solve the case as soon as possible and safeguard the lives and property of Chinese nationals in the country. Japan's Liberal Democratic Party has approved a draft proposal to expand the scope of defense equipment exports. The proposal will, in principle, allow the export of weapons with lethal capabilities, such as fighter jets and frigates. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has expressed serious concerns, saying Japan has drastically changed its security policies in recent years. It said Japanese officials have openly advocated for nuclear armament and have lifted restrictions on arms exports. The ministry said this once again exposes the far-right ambition in Japan to remilitarize and to challenge the post-war international order and domestic laws. It urged the international community to remain vigilant and resist Japan's reckless militarism. The ministry also called for joint efforts to defend the legacy of the World War II victory and uphold the post-war international order. A Chinese Commerce Ministry spokesperson said on Thursday that the decision to add 20 Japanese entities to an export control list targets only a small number of entities, and that the restriction applies solely to dual-use items. She said normal economic and trade ties between the two countries will not be affected. Dr. David Tizard's an assistant professor of Korean studies at Seoul Women's University, and he says that it's not Japan's military buildup itself, but the ideological shift accompanying it that's most concerning.
The concern is not Japan's right to self-defense. That, of course, is a whole other issue that's tied up with their constitution, with history, with World War II, and so on. But it's not the right to self-defense that's the issue here. It's the ideological framing that accompanies military expansionism. Now, increases in military budgets are not always inherently destabilizing. What is destabilizing and what does cause trouble is historical revisionism. It's when political leaders, parties, groups, or people try to rewrite the past, or they try to reimagine the future through a version of the past which we do not have at the moment. Now, militarism, we might think it begins in hardware, in tanks and battleships and missiles, but generally it normally begins in language and education. It's the ideas that promote this. So when political leaders soften the language around aggression, or they rebrand imperial history as defensive necessities, that's when we should have alarm bells sounding, not just in East Asia, but across the world. Militarism can increase incrementally, often under the banner of everything being normal. The appropriate response is, of course, not confrontation, but collective vigilance, a commitment to international law.
That was Dr. David Tizard, an assistant professor of Korean studies at Seoul Women's University. At 29 past the hour. Beijing, a light snowfall overnight. It's down to 0 Thursday evening. Friday is cloudy and 7 degrees. Shanghai will see moderate rain and 9 degrees overnight, then a light rain and 12. Chongqing's overcast tonight and tomorrow, a low of 14, a high of 21. Nanchung's getting moderate rainfall and 10 this evening, then overcast conditions and 14. Lhasa will be cloudy tonight and tomorrow, a low of -2 and a high of 14. It's time for a short break. So far this hour, the Chinese president's outlined the country's priorities for its ties with Germany during the official visit by the German Chancellor. The U.S. and Iran are conducting a third round of indirect talks in Geneva, aiming to reach deals on Iran's nuclear program and U.S. sanctions. And the Chinese Consulate-General in Osaka has warned Chinese travelers about visiting Japan. Shane Bigham with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Shh, listen up. Can you hear the heartbeat of our world? It's vibrant and pulsating with the essence of life itself. From the stem of trees to the gurgle of rivers. From the silent strength of mountains to the icy whispers of glaciers. Even the solid ground beneath our feet. And right there, in the midst of all, beats the heart of humanity. What if those other heartbeats were to stop? Would ours keep on ticking?
Ever wondered what's actually going on in Africa through the perspective of an African? How are things really going between China and Africa? What's the narrative of this relationship? Well, get a perspective with China-Africa Talk. Hear from African diplomats, entrepreneurs, academics, Chinese natives, and more. Get on our wavelength every week to find out what's real with China-Africa Talk. Find us on your favorite podcast. We'll see you there.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host,
Shane Bigham with you on this Thursday. Still to come. In business, 12 years of coordinated development in the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei region. In sports, the latest teams to advance in the UEFA Champions League. In culture and entertainment, China's box office has taken the lead globally. To contact us, you can email radio@cgtn.com or follow our X account @CGTNradio. But first of all, with a check of the day's headlines, here's Tianlu.
Thank you, Shane. Beijing has hailed practical cooperation as the defining feature of its relationship with Berlin as German Chancellor Friedrich Merz wraps up his China tour on Thursday. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said the presence of 30 senior executives from leading German companies underscored Berlin's confidence in and commitment to deepening pragmatic cooperation with China. She said the two sides agreed to better align China's upcoming 15th five-year plan with Germany's development strategy to achieve higher levels of mutual benefit. Beijing described the trip as productive and meaningful, saying it demonstrated both sides' commitment to maintaining a stable and constructive relationship. China says it stands ready to use the visit as a springboard to open a new chapter in bilateral ties and inject greater stability and positive energy into an increasingly uncertain world. China's top court says trials have wrapped up for two major criminal gangs based in northern Myanmar linked to telecom and online fraud. Courts nationwide concluded more than 27,000 first-instance cases tied to telecom fraud operations in northern Myanmar by the end of last year. More than 41,000 returned suspects have been sentenced. The Supreme People's Court says proceedings involving two of the so-called four major families, the Ming and Bai groups, have now been fully completed. 39 people received life sentences or heavier penalties, including 16 who were sentenced to death. Iranian and U.S. delegations have met in Geneva for a third round of indirect talks mediated by Oman. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has forbidden weapons of mass destruction, which means Tehran will not develop nuclear weapons. Earlier, Iranian Foreign Minister Said Abbas Araghchi met his Omani counterpart in Switzerland ahead of the talks. Araghchi outlined Tehran's position on its nuclear program and the lifting of U.S. sanctions and thanked Oman for mediation efforts. U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly threatened strikes if Iran does not reach a deal on its nuclear program. A UN official has warned that about a third of Somalia's population will face crisis levels of hunger through March. Rod Smith is the World Food Programme Director of Emergency Preparedness and Response.
The latest IPC report for Somalia was released, and it confirms the fears that we've had that the humanitarian situation has significantly worsened, with 6.5 million people, a third of the population, facing crisis levels of hunger through March this year. This is 1.7 million more than just since January. Of these, 2 million of the most vulnerable women and children are expected to face severe hunger.
Smith warned that over 1.8 million children under the age of 5 will face acute malnutrition this year, and that thousands of people have been forced to flee their homes in search of shelter, food, and basic services. He added that agencies including WFP are facing a severe lack of resources, warning that its life-saving emergency food and nutrition assistance in Somalia will be forced to cut support to the most vulnerable. Peru has declared a state of emergency as severe rainfall, landslides and floods have struck nearly half of the country's districts. The country's interim president has signed a decree aiming to fast-track funding for local and regional authorities to secure vital infrastructure while protecting lives and health. Over 700 districts across the Pacific coast, the Andes and the Amazon are now under a state of emergency. The Transportation Ministry said over 900 kilometers of roads have been damaged nationwide. Rain-related causes have killed dozens of people since December. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung is urging sustained efforts to reduce hostility with North Korea and pursue peace and stability. He told presidential secretaries that they must break away from the past that was racing toward war and confrontation. He said Seoul believes structural peace and stability will eventually arrive on the Korean peninsula if it engages in dialogue and cooperation. According to the official Korean Central News Agency, North Korean top leader Kim Jong-un reaffirmed the South as the most hostile entity and an eternal enemy at the recently held ruling party Congress.
All right, thank you very much. That's Tian Lu with headlines. Coming up in business, 12 years of coordinated development in the Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei region.
The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
37 past the hour. With business now, here's Wang Ziheng.
Thank you, Shane. Stock markets on the Chinese mainland closed mixed on Thursday. The Shanghai Composite was down slightly, while the Shenzhen component gained nearly 0.2%. Wind power and telecommunications equipment were among the top gainers. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index decreased over 1.4%. Elsewhere in Japan, the Nikkei increased almost 0.3%. Now, Thursday marks the 12th anniversary of the Coordinated Development Strategy for the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei region. Home to over 100 million people, the northern region has seen its economic surge, with GDP rising from roughly 9 trillion yuan in 2020, or about $1.3 trillion, to nearly 12 trillion yuan last year. Beijing alone reduced urban and rural construction land by 150 square kilometers and phased out more than 3,000 general manufacturing enterprises. Transport links have expanded with 710 kilometers of new railway added, establishing a 60 to 90 minutes travel circle among major cities. Innovation has also grown as technology contracts flowing from Beijing to Tianjin and Hebei exceeded 320 billion yuan, expanding at an average annual rate of 23%. Meantime, Beijing, Tianjin and Hebei have leveraged their complementary advantages and achieved rapid growth in foreign trade. Customs data shows that between 2014 and 25, the region's total trade volume grew by 25%. Exports in particular saw an increase of nearly 57% over the period. The private sector has also emerged as a key driver of growth, with its trade soaring by an impressive 168%. The region's main trading partners include the European Union, ASEAN, and countries participating in the Belt and Road Initiative. As this year's Spring Festival Gala, traditional Kung Fu artists share the stage with their robot partners. The Woobot performance featured dozens of humanoid machines moving in sync with martial artists, presenting a blend of cultural heritage and cutting-edge technology. For more, Zheng Junfeng spoke with Andy Mok, a senior research fellow at the Center for China and Globalization, a think tank in Beijing.
Andy, so many people watch the New Year Gala. One of the most frequently asked questions on Tube about their unitary robotics, especially Kung Fu robots, is how China managed to make such remarkable progress in just 1 year.
No, that's absolutely right, Junfeng. I mean, I think this recent performance really amazed people all around the world. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. So most directly, of course, is the focused application of engineering talent. So we've watched the advances in these robots, as we've heard, in terms of speed and precision. That's certainly one. But I think we cannot overlook the role of government in terms of providing supportive policies to encourage the rapid development of that. So I think briefly, that is the reason. And I think it's important to point out that the prominence of these robots on the Spring Gala show, I think, is also a very important signal to China and the world just how important robotics is.
Right. Why is China able to lead the world, at least for now, in the field of humanoid robotics? And can this advantage be replicated by other countries?
Well, Junfeng, I think we've seen some exciting advances in terms of the physical movements that robots can do, especially in groups or fleets. But the big thing we have to pay attention to is what I would call economic irreversibility. And what that means is when robots become the default choice for at least one major industry application, whether that's automotive, whether that's in healthcare, whether that's in logistics. And I think here, China, again, because of its enormous market, the speed of iteration, the government support in terms of reducing the friction for this to happen, I think gives it an important advantage. And I think where other countries, Germany, the United States, Japan, other parts of the world can play is certainly picking a specific niche or sector here. And again, it could be actuators, it could be the chips. And I think, the U.S. in particular has strengths in foundational models that can develop what I would call embodied general artificial intelligence, just like we talk about large language models today that can write poems, write code, do many, many things. We're still not at that point yet where we have embodied general artificial intelligence.
There was Andy Mok with the Center for China and Globalization talking about the humanoid robotics industry. China has announced an updated catalogue of services it encourages for import. Multiple authorities, including the Commerce Ministry and the National Development and Reform Commission, made the revisions. The Commerce Ministry says the move aims to meet urgent domestic needs in high-quality development and meet people's needs for better lives. The Hong Kong Special Administrative Region has announced its budget plan for the year. Highlights include a push for innovation and technology, an intellectual property economy, and tax concessions. Ann Chang reports.
Hong Kong has unveiled its budget plans for the coming fiscal year. Embracing the country's 15th five-year plan is a focus.
Our country will implement more proactive macro policies this year, expanding domestic demand and steadfastly advancing high-quality development while maintaining reasonable economic growth. This will lay a strong foundation for the 15th five-year plan period and generates propitious conditions for Hong Kong's economic growth.
In this endeavor, key areas include driving the Finance Plus initiative to capitalize on the financial sector and develop industries with a competitive edge, enhancing Hong Kong's role as a superconnector to help firms go global and bring in external investments, as well as attracting and nurturing talent. Another focus is the development of innovation and technology, including artificial intelligence. The finance chief said he'll chair a new committee on AI Plus and industry development strategy. This committee will formulate strategies and create favorable conditions for AI to further develop different industries. The government further aims to popularize the understanding and use of AI for all levels of society. Measures include allocating $6.39 million for public organizations to organize AI application courses, seminars, and competitions. The government is also seeking legislative approval for $2.5 billion to develop the northern metropolis. Half of that amount will be for the Hetao Hong Kong Park, a cross-border innovation and technology hub, while the other half will be for the Santin Technopole, a tech hub focusing on research and development.
There's also a push to develop the city into a regional intellectual property trading center. Measures for this include a $6.6 million budget allocated for an intellectual property academy.
That's a 2-year pilot program to train and nurture talent. To relieve economic pressure on people and businesses, a series of tax concessions were announced. That includes cutting salaries tax under personal assessment and profits tax by 100%, subject to a ceiling of around $380. This benefits over 2 million taxpayers and over 170,000 businesses. Meanwhile, government expenditure will increase by 6.9% to $107 billion. The operating account is estimated to record a surplus of about $1.5 billion, while the capital account is estimated to record a deficit of about $11.5 billion. Taking into account bond issuances and repayments, a consolidated surplus of $2.83 billion is expected for the year.
The government is able to have a projected surplus in the operating account, which deal with the day-to-day expense that government has. However, if we look at the total amount, which would include long-term investment through bond issuance on infrastructure, then Hong Kong is pretty much in a new era of fiscal deficit for the long-term growth and investment. So it is really a test for the Hong Kong government to how to mobilize the resources for the better long-term outcome.
The expert says finance is still an important sector for the economy's growth. He adds that opportunities can be further explored in an IPO Connect scheme with the Chinese mainland, gold trading, and green financing.
There was An Chang on Hong Kong's new budget plan. And finally, a Chinese research team has achieved energy density of 700 watt-hours per kilogram in lithium batteries. The scientists made the breakthrough by designing and synthesizing a new series of electrolyte systems. The research findings have been published in the international academic journal Nature. Energy density of lithium batteries directly determines how much electricity a battery can store. The discovery will allow electric aircraft to fly higher and longer or carry heavier payloads. It's also crucial for high-end equipment such as satellites and drones.
All right, thank you very much. That's Wang Ziheng with Business. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, and coming up in sports, the latest teams to advance in the UEFA Champions League.
Sideline Story brings you all things sports related. The hottest topics, latest events, juiciest stories, all with a very personal take. Subscribe to Sideline Story Podcast for heated sports discussions covering events that are happening in China and around the world.
47 past the hour now. Turning to sports, and here's Yang Guang.
Thank you, Shane. In football, Real Madrid beat Benfica 2-1 at home to reach the Champions League last 16. They won 3-1 on aggregate. Vinicius Jr. scored the winning goal in the 80th minute. Benfica took an early lead through Rafa Silva. Kylian Tchouaméni quickly equalized for Madrid. The home team struggled for long spells without Kylian Mbappe, who sat out with a knee injury. Vinicius secured the victory, firing past the keeper. Real Madrid head coach Álvaro Arbeloa says Vinicius played well.
Joy, of course, because of the great goal he scored. He did it. He deserved it for the form he's in right now, for how well he's playing. Also, without Kylian Mbappe, I think it's even more important. I'm very happy for him because I think he really deserves it.
Madrid will face Manchester City or Sporting CP in the next round. Elsewhere, PSG reached the last 16 after a 2-2 draw with Monaco, advancing 5-4 on aggregate. PSG head coach Luis Enrique says PSG deserved qualification.
I think we deserved this win, or rather this qualification, but it was difficult because for me, the outcome was complicated. It was a tricky match in the beginning because we talked a lot about going to win the match. It was complicated in the first minutes. There are times when you lose precision and it's difficult to recover your level. But I think we have to be proud of what we did and overcome this difficult moment in the first half.
PSG will face either Barcelona or Chelsea in the last 16. The flame for the Milano Cortina Winter Paralympics is having a journey across Italy before arriving in Verona on March the 6th for the opening ceremony. It was lit in the English city of Stoke Mandeville, which is the birthplace of the Paralympic movement. Great Britain's full-time para-alpine skiing medalist Millie Knight, alongside Italy's para-ice hockey vice-captain Andrea Margri, lit the flame during the ceremony honoring the Paralympic legacy. Over 600 athletes from 50 nations and regions will compete in 6 sports across 79 medal events, including para-alpine skiing, biathlon, cross-country ice hockey, snowboard, and wheelchair curling. China's national para-ice hockey team is gearing up for the Games and making final preparations. Forward Shen Yifeng has become a key member of the side, playing a central role at Beijing 2022 as the leading scorer with 8 goals and 6 assists. He took time to talk about his decade-long journey.
I remember it very clearly. From June 2016 to March 2026, when the Games end, it will be a full 10 years. I scored China's first ever goal at the 2022 Beijing Winter Paralympics and the team's first goal at the 2023 World Para-Ice Hockey Championships. I want to keep moving forward. I hope more people with disabilities will step out, see the world, and discover how exciting it can be.
The 28-year-old expressed the hope to bring his years of experience to Milano Cortina and also continue to help the sport's development across China. International Olympic Committee President Kirsty Coventry has expressed gratitude for China Media Group's contribution to the Milano Cortina Winter Olympics. Coventry praised the close partnership between the IOC and the CMG, emphasizing that the collaboration laid a solid foundation for the Games. She highlighted CMG's vital role in enabling athletes to perform at their best and in bringing their stories to billions of viewers. She also commented on CMG's innovative achievements, noting her visit to the International Broadcasting Center, where she experienced the new technologies. Looking ahead, Coventry also said she is eager to deepen cooperation with the CMG in promoting the Olympic spirit, innovating the Olympic experience, and inspiring future generations. Now turning to tennis, Chinese player Wu Yibing has booked a place in the quarterfinals of the ATP Mexican Open in Acapulco. He beat Sho Shimabukuro in straight sets. This marks his first ATP 500 quarterfinal. And finally, Daniil Medvedev has stormed into the quarterfinals of the Dubai Championships. He came into the last 8 with a straight sets win over Stan Wawrinka. He will face Jenson Brooksby for a place in the next round. Felix Auger-Aliassime battled past Giovanni Ampeci Pericard to reach the quarterfinals. He now advanced to face Jerry Lehechka for a spot in the last 4. Andrei Rublev has also advanced with a hard-fought victory over Ugo Humbert.
All right, thank you very much. That's Yang Guang with sports. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in culture and entertainment, China's box office is taking the lead globally.
From north to south, east to west, people in China are chasing their dreams and leaving their mark. Want to know how they beat the odds and made a difference? Footprints brings you the true life stories of their journeys.
52 past the hour. Turning to culture and entertainment, China's 2026 Spring Festival box office exceeded 5.7 billion yuan, despite the average ticket price dropping by 6%. The number of moviegoers reached around 120 million. Total screenings hit 4.3 million, setting a new record for the holiday period. The lineup featured diverse domestic films, catering to audiences of all ages and regions with varied tastes. During the holiday, moviegoing in 3rd and 4th tier cities was particularly strong, contributing more than half of the total box office. This year, film viewing subsidies expanded. The China Film Administration encouraged organizations and platforms to issue coupons. During Spring Festival, viewers redeemed over 180 million yuan in vouchers, driving more than 1.7 billion yuan in box office revenue. Shanghai, Beijing, Anhui, and other regions provided 60 million yuan in subsidized tickets. The booming Spring Festival market has pushed China's 2026 box office past 9 billion yuan, making it the world's top-grossing film market so far this year. Chinese animated film Ne Jia 2 has opened in South Korea. It ranked 3rd at the daily box office on Wednesday. The film has earned over $2.2 billion globally and is now the highest grossing Chinese film ever. A South Korean distributor said the film's success in China and growing global influence drove them to acquire it. The distributor plans to bring more Chinese works to the South Korean market. The China Three Gorges Museum in Chongqing is presenting two special exhibitions. One showcases over 220 artifacts to celebrate the Year of the Horse. The other features a bronze collection from the Northern Steppes. Zhang Shuang reports.
The horse embodies cultural connotations of progress and prosperity. The exhibition, titled Good Fortune Arrives on Horseback, skillfully weaves the narrative of equine culture over the millennia through a diverse collection of artifacts, including calligraphy, paintings, bronzeware, and draped pieces, comprehensively recounting the storied legacy of the beast of burden.
For instance, we have showcased our most prized possession, the miscellany of paintings. This is a collection of paintings by 8 court artists from the Southern Song dynasty. Our highlight is Horses Grazing in Green Pastures by Ma Lin. This album consists of 5 paintings, each bearing poetic inscriptions from Empress Yang, gifted to her brother. The artwork may depict 6 or 7 horses. We invite you to find the one that represents the horse of happiness.
Furthermore, key cultural relics such as the Xu Beihong's galloping horse, Zhang Dajian's fine brushwork black horse, and every waist attack from the Ming Dynasty's Moma Qianhu Suo, 1,000 households posed for horse herding, and a Ming Dynasty cloud-shaped gold hairpin collectively illustrate the enduring Chinese aesthetic and emotional connection with horses.
This exhibition is quite interesting, offering us many insights into equine culture and the relationship between horses and humans. In terms of symbolism, the horse carries very auspicious connotations. This can be seen in phrases like success arriving swiftly and taking the lead. These are all highly positive associations.
In the same museum, another exhibition shifts the audience gaze toward the vast northern grasslands. The metal road of the northern grasslands, bronze echoes from Ordos, brings together over 450 artifacts, systematically tracing the development of a trajectory of bronzeware from the northern grasslands. Notably, it also highlights the exchange networks between the grassland civilization and the Bashu region.
In the northern regions, the ring pommel sword was prevalent, and we have also unearthed some ring pommel swords in the Bashu region. They spread to the Bashu region by way of the Central Plains, acting as an intermediary link between the north and Bashu. This transmission through the Central Plains also illustrates the cultural integration and exchange of that era.
The Chongqing China Three Gorges Museum Spring Festival double exhibition has successfully integrated traditional Chinese New Year customs with profound history. It not only provides citizens with high-quality cultural leisure activities, but also vividly interprets the increasingly popular new option of celebrating the New Year in the museum.
That was Zhang Shuang reporting. 57 past now. Beijing's getting a light snow and a low of 0 on Thursday evening. Clouds and 7 degrees for Friday. Shanghai is getting moderate rainfall and 9 degrees overnight, then more light rain and 12 degrees. Chongqing's overcast tonight and tomorrow, a low 14, a high of 21. Nanchang will see moderate rain and 10 degrees, and then overcast conditions and 14. Lhasa's cloudy tonight and tomorrow, a low of -2, the high is 14. Elsewhere in Asia, Islamabad's down to 11 this evening, then clouds and 24 on Friday. Vientiane will see a light rainfall overnight and tomorrow, a low of 22 and a high of 30. Phnom Penh's getting heavy rainfall and 23 degrees overnight, and then a light rain and 30 degrees. And that's it for this edition of the Beijing Hour. Making news today, the Chinese president's outlined the country's priorities for its ties with Germany during the official visit by the German chancellor. And the U.S. and Iran are conducting a third round of indirect talks in Geneva, aiming to reach deals on Iran's nuclear program and U.S. sanctions. On behalf of the staff, this is Shane Bigham in the Chinese capital, hoping you'll join us for the next edition of the Beijing Hour and open a window to the world together.
Find the Beijing Hour at precisely 6 p.m. Beijing time. We meet you on podcast and on air every weekday. The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
He can't live without the yellow river in his eyes.
The Yellow River is so noble and elegant.
Both my grandpa and dad made a living from the river.
Would you like to move away from the Yellow River?
哎呀，不愿意。
I don't think I will. I love it so much.
The Yellow River, the second longest river in China, is regarded as a shaping force in the history, economy, and culture of northern China. Today, about 100 million people live within its water basin, making up nearly 9% of the country's population. How is climate change felt at its headwaters, and what are the locals doing to cope with it? What are the descendants of the boatmen doing? What has kept some people from leaving their home village by the river, and what has drawn others back? Could the fading fishing community revive in a time of digital transformation? From 2021 to 2024, our reporters visited the upper, middle, and lower reaches of the Yellow River, talked to the herders, farmers, boatmen, fishermen, and eco-activists who share a close bond with the river, and present their stories in pictures, podcasts, and videos, all in our 12-part series, The Yellow River Mosaic, available only on CGTN Radio